Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video, and welcome to the final vlog of Victober. So today is Tuesday the 22nd of October, and I thought I would start a new vlog and let you know what I am reading currently. So at the moment, I am listening to two books on audiobook. So I'm listening to The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Keep forgetting I do actually have a physical copy to hold up when I'm talking about it, even though I am listening to the audiobook. I really love The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. They're really good, fun short stories, and I've been really enjoying re-listening to the audiobook narrated by Stephen Fry. So I have listened to these stories many times before. This is a reread for me, so I've mostly been reading them like when I am driving or going to sleep, or like not fully concentrating on the audiobook as much as the other thing I'm doing. I'm kind of hoping I will finish this today or tomorrow because I only have two short stories left, but I'm really enjoying that so far. And then last night I started listening to Jezebel's Daughter by Wilkie, which I'm really enjoying so far. I'm sort of an hour and a half in, and I don't really know where the story is going. So far we have met a young man who is living with his aunt. His aunt was very recently widowed, and her husband has left all her business affairs and his charitable affairs in her hands. And in general, I am just really enjoying it so far. It's really interesting. The book I was listening to most recently as my main audiobook, The Lancashire Witches by William Harrison Ainsworth, which I finished yesterday and did not like. It was just such a magical switch. Wilkie Collins' writing style is just so much better than William Harrison Ainsworth, and his writing is so much smoother, and that's just been very nice. So those are the audiobooks I'm listening to at the moment. And then physically, the main two things I am reading, I'm reading The Perpetual Curate by Margaret Oliphant. I'm about 60 pages in, so I'm not very far through at all. I really need to crack on with this one this week. And I'm also reading Mrs. Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope on my Kindle, and I am about a third of the way through that and really loving it. It's so good. It always is. It's Anthony Trollope. And I had a momentary panic yesterday when my Kindle decided to break and go completely blank, and I thought it's going to be very upsetting if my Kindle breaks during Victober when I'm in the middle of reading a very good Anthony Trollope book. But I reset it and it now seems to be working, but I'm slightly paranoid that my Kindle is gonna break again in the next few weeks, but we'll see. And then there are two other books that I have been reading for a very long time, which are Victorian, that I've been reading like a bit of here and there throughout the year, that I do want to try and read a bit more of in the last 10 days of Victober. So one of these is London Labour and the London Poor by Henry Mayhew, a collection of kind of essays and articles about the London poor in the 1840s, 1850s. And I am nearly halfway through, and I have read a bit of this in the last week. I'm just kept forgetting to mention it in my previous vlog, but hopefully I will read a bit more of this before Victober ends. And then I also have Varney the Vampire, which I have been reading this year on and off. This was a penny dreadful from the Victorian period about vampires, and it's really good fun, very silly but very delightfully fun and very Victorian. And I think I'm going to read a bit more of this evening actually, because I am doing some reading sprints as a kind of mashup with Gothtober run by Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe. So me and Olivia Savannah and Roz from Scally Daddling About the Books and Mary Among Stories are doing some reading sprints this evening that are like combining Gothtober and Victober. Victober obviously being a Victorian literature readathon, and Gothtober being a like Gothic and horror literature readathon. And I thought Varney the Vampire, being a work of Victorian Gothic horror, would be the perfect book to read during those reading sprints. So I'm gonna read a bit more of this evening, I think. I'm really hoping that I will get quite a lot of reading done in the last 10 days of October. I'm hoping to be able to take a few days off, not this week, but next week. I've got a big deadline at the end of this week. Once that's handed in, I should be able to take a few days off and just read, which would be lovely. I work freelance, and I make a record of the weekend days I work, and try and give myself time back in lieu when I have worked a weekend. And I worked a lot of weekends in August and September, so I owe myself 8 days in lieu. My schedule will not allow me to take all 8 days off in lieu at once, but I reckon I could take like at least 3 days off to just read in the final 10 days of October. I'm not sure, because I do have quite a lot of booktube stuff I want to do, and if I spend like a whole day filming booktube videos, then that's not a whole day I'm spending reading. But we will see. I'm hopeful I can get quite a lot read in the last 10 days of October. That is quite enough ramble for today, and I will check in again soon. So hello, it is Wednesday the 23rd of October and I don't have too much to report today, but I did just want to say how much I enjoyed reading quite a lot of Varney the Vampire last night. I read like a good 100 pages over our Gothtober, Victober reading sprints and I just really enjoyed it. It was lovely to remember how much I have been loving Varney the Vampire and to push me to read it more. I also wanted to say that yesterday I finished off listening to The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which I really enjoyed. I love Stephen Fry's narration on audiobook, and there are so many great stories within this collection. In general, I prefer the Sherlock Holmes short stories to the novels, and I just think there are some great stories within that collection. I just really enjoy the dynamic between Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and all of Sherlock Holmes' like clever deduction is just so much fun to read about. So that was very excellent. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say for today. I will crack on with my reading and I will check in again soon. Hello again, it is Friday the 25th of October. I don't have too much to report in terms of how my reading is going. I'm still reading The Perpetual Curate, I'm still reading Mrs. Scarborough's Family, I'm still listening to Jezebel's Daughter. I haven't done as much reading this week as I thought I would, mostly because I have been doing a lot of booktube work. I am preparing a big, exciting series that will be up next week, hopefully. Which will have already been up by the time you're seeing this vlog, I guess, a guide to Victorian authors, which I'm having a lot of fun with, but it's very time consuming. So I haven't got as much reading done as I thought I would. I'm also hoping to get a lot of reading done tomorrow. So tomorrow I am going on a booktuber meetup, which is very exciting. I'm really looking forward to that. I will probably film a separate booktuber meetup vlog and book haul if I buy any books, although I feel like I really shouldn't buy any books because my TBR is out of control right now. We'll see. I'll probably buy something. Anyway, we're doing a booktuber meetup in York, which I think will be really fun. And there's quite a few booktubers coming along who haven't been to booktuber meetups before because, you know, they live in the north of England and it's a long way to come to London, which is where we've done the booktuber meetups previously. So it'll be really nice to have a meetup in York and meet some booktubers who I haven't met in person before. I think it should be really fun. We should have about 20 of us, I think, so that'll be great. But York is obviously not that near London, so I have quite a long train journey very early tomorrow morning and then tomorrow evening. So I think I'll probably get quite a lot read on the train. So yeah, I think I will do a separate booktube meetup vlog, but I will probably put in a couple of clips into this video too. Anyway, that is all for this evening. I'm going to go back to editing videos and I will check in again very soon. Hello again, so it is Monday the 28th of October and I had a very lovely weekend. The booktuber meetup on Saturday was so fun. I will make a separate video about that at some point. I won't tell you about the books I bought today, I'll save that for the vlog and book haul video, even though I did buy some Victorian things, which was very exciting. So in terms of how my reading is going, I read a lot of The Perpetual Curate on Saturday on the train, so I am near the end now. I've got about 100 pages left. It's so good. I really got so into it, reading a ton of it on Saturday, and I'm really excited to finish it. So I'm hoping I'm going to finish this evening. And then I'm doing well with Mrs. Scarborough's Family, but I still am, I don't know, slightly over halfway through that, so I've got more of that to read as well. And then I also got to the end of volume 1 in London Labour and the London Poor, so that was nice. And I feel like that's maybe a good point to pause it and finish the rest of it off in Non-Fiction November, because I feel like there are other things I want to prioritise more in Victober. I am doing really well with Jezebel's Daughter. I think I'll probably finish that in the next day or two. As I said earlier in this vlog, I am taking quite a lot of this week more or less off basically I don't have freelance editorial work most of this week. I might have something later this week coming in, but I might not. And my main intention this week is to do a lot of booktube stuff and read. I was kind of hoping earlier on in the month that I would be able to take like this whole week just to read, but I am not quite as far through my Guide to Victorian Authors series on booktube as I wanted to be, and that has been very time consuming. Super fun, but very time consuming. So today I'm basically doing booktube stuff like all day long. And then this evening I will hopefully do some reading and finish The Perpetual Curate. And then tomorrow I'm going to have like mostly a reading day and hopefully read The Haunted House by Charles Dickens and start The Fate of Fenella. That's my plan, but we'll see how we go. Hello, so it is Tuesday evening, the 29th of October, and I do have some reading updates for you today. I finally finished some books. I feel like I haven't finished anything for ages, but there we go. I didn't get as much reading done as I wanted to yesterday. In fact, I didn't get any reading done yesterday. I spent all day yesterday doing booktube work, like literally from like 8 in the morning till 11 at night. It was all very fun. I'm absolutely loving doing the Guide to Victorian Authors series. So I didn't get any reading done yesterday, and then this morning I did sort of booktube work all morning, but then I had a physio appointment in the afternoon, and then I had some plans in the evening. So between that, I found a cafe and sat and read, which was very nice. So I finished reading The Perpetual Curate by Margaret Oliphant, which was a delight. I really enjoyed this. There was one plot line that I kind of wish had ended differently, but in general, I really loved it. There was so much like loveliness and heartwarming stuff, and really moving passages later on in the novel. I found the character of Frank Wentworth, the Perpetual Curate, really interesting, and I feel like this is a really interesting book in the way it looks at like reputation, and especially at male reputation, because I feel like there's a lot of Victorian literature about a woman's reputation and, you know, how precious a woman's reputation is, whereas the title character of this novel, the Perpetual Curate, his reputation is kind of challenged, and what that means to him as a man and especially as a clergyman is kind of really interestingly explored in this book, and especially interesting as I have been reading this at the same time as Mrs. Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope, which also deals a lot with male reputation, and kind of a man losing his reputation and standing in society. I'm really loving Mrs. Scarborough's Family too, but I do still have quite a lot left of that to go. But I did finish something else. In fact, I started and finished today The Haunted House by Charles Dickens and Others, which was quite disappointing actually, I'm sad to say. So this was one of the picks for my challenge for Victober, a book that plays with form. This is this is meant to be an interconnected short story collection in which lots of different characters come together at a haunted house and tell each other ghost stories, and all the ghost stories are written by different authors. The like introductory story in which Charles Dickens introduces you to the haunted house was really fun, and then everything after that was not really very ghostly at all, which was a bit of a disappointment. And some of the stories were quite fun, but it kind of felt like Charles Dickens had an idea and then no one followed the brief. And then there were a few other things that were a slight disappointment. So like I was really looking forward to a new short story by Elizabeth Gaskell. But when I got to the story in this book called The Ghost in the Garden Room by Elizabeth Gaskell, it is in fact a short story that I have read before by Elizabeth Gaskell that I know by the title The Crooked Branch, and I've read it several times before, and it's a good story. Like, it was nice to reread it, but I was looking forward to a new bit of Gaskell, and it was actually a bit of Gaskell I've read several times before. So overall, I'm a bit disappointed by The Haunted House. Charles, you let me down. Or maybe that's not fair, because Charles Dickens's bits were like the only bits that were maybe vaguely ghostly. So maybe other authors, you've let Charles down, is what I'm saying. I've also very nearly finished Jezebel's Daughter. I think I should finish that off tomorrow. In fact, I'll definitely finish that off tomorrow because I'm going to do some Halloween baking tomorrow, and I will listen to an audiobook while I bake. So I will definitely get through Jezebel's Daughter and probably start The White Company by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, although I feel like there's no chance I'm finishing that in Victober now, but you know. Anyway, I'm glad I got 2 things finished. I feel like my main aim for Victober now is to finish off Mrs. Scarborough's Family and finish off Jezebel's Daughter. I do really want to read The Fate of Fenella though. Maybe I'll start The Fate of Fenella, and if I finish it off in November, that's kind of fine. But maybe I should at least start it in Victober. Somehow in my week off, like my main job, I feel busier than ever. But I guess that's because I had in my head I could do tons and tons of reading and all of the booktube stuff that I wanted to do this week, and actually all of that takes a lot of time. Anyway, I will stop rambling and I will speak to you tomorrow. Hello again, it is Wednesday afternoon, the 30th day of October, also known as the penultimate day of Victober. And earlier today, while I was doing some Halloween baking, I finished off listening to Jezebel's Daughter by Wilkie Collins, which I thought was pretty good. Not like top tier 5-star Wilkie Collins, but you know, like 3.5, 4-star, pretty decent. Some really dramatic moments. There were some good like sinister, spooky bits near the end, which is quite fun, I guess, in the run up to Halloween. And I feel like there were some interesting characters, some interesting themes, some good tension. Like it was a really good, fun read. As I said, I think Wilkie Collins wrote a better, more interesting book, but it was really enjoyable and definitely better than my previous listen, The Lancashire Witches. Then after I finished listening to Jezebel's Daughter, I had a little bit more time left to do baking stuff where I knew I would be listening to an audiobook. So I was thinking about starting The White Company by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, but I know that I'm not going to finish that before the end of October. But I remembered that I had taken out of the library an audiobook of the long short story by George Eliot called The Lifted Veil, because I have it in this collection, The Lifted Veil, Women's 19th Century Stories, and I had been intending to read the 3 Victorian stories in here that I haven't read before this October. But as you may know, if you have watched my channel for a while, I'm not a big George Eliot fan, and I wasn't sure whether I could bring myself to read George Eliot. So I thought maybe if I had it on audiobook, I would be more likely to read it. So instead of starting The White Company, I listened to The Lifted Veil, which was only sort of 2 hours on audiobook, and I quite liked it. It was fine. I don't like George Eliot's writing style, but this one was in first person, which made it slightly more engaging. But I wasn't super fussed by it as a story. It was kind of spooky, that was kind of fun while doing Halloween baking, but it was not that exciting. Basically, The Lifted Veil tells the story of this man's childhood and youth, and he has some kind of like mystical, magical powers of premonition and like understanding other people's emotions, which is kind of interesting in premise, but I didn't find it a very exciting story in its writing, and I feel like the pacing was a bit odd. Like, I kind of don't know what the point was. That sounds so harsh. I did like it more than other things I've read by George Eliot, but it wasn't that exciting. Anyway, that's all for now, and I will check in tomorrow and let you know how the last of my Victober goes. Hello again, it is the 31st of October, the final day of Victober, wearing my Victober top in celebration / commiseration. I'm very sad Victober is ending, especially because I have not finished all the things I want to finish. So it's Thursday afternoon now. I have spent the morning doing lots of booktube work, and then this afternoon I'm meeting a friend, a fellow freelance editor, for coffee. So I'll read on the way to and from that, and then maybe this evening I will just do lots of reading. What I should really be focusing on today is finishing Mr. Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope, but instead I started The Fate of Fenella. Partly, I think, because this was a selection for my challenge for Victober, so I really felt I should at least start it in Victober. So I started The Fate of Fenella and I read 50 pages like really quickly. It's such a fast, fun, wild read. So there's a bit of me that thinks maybe I should just read The Fate of Fenella today and finish Mrs. Scarborough's Family next month. But I don't know. I will see how I go. I'll do a bit more reading this evening and I will probably tell you tomorrow how I've got on. There is another bit of me that just thinks I should extend Victober to the end of the week. I'm actually going to see a Victorian play on Sunday. I'm going to see a production of Arthur Pinheiro's The Cabinet Minister. So I feel like Victober is already continuing to Sunday for me because of that. So maybe I should just keep reading lots of Victorian things until Sunday and then I'll start whatever I want to read in November next week. We'll see. This was like the weirdest thing I've ever read, but I kind of liked it. Hello again, it is 11:30 in the evening on the 31st of October, so there's, you know, half an hour of Victober left to go, but I think I'm gonna give up and go to bed now. But I thought I would tell you how my reading went today, because I did get quite a lot read. So I'm now 2/3 of the way through Mrs. Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope. I didn't manage to finish it this Victober, but that's fine. I will finish it off in the next couple of days. But I did manage to read today the whole of The Fate of Fenella. I think just because it was a very speedy read, it's not very long and it was very quick to get through. Partly I think just sort of very late Victorian writing does tend to be sort of a faster read. It's not very dense, and also just because the plot went at such a rate. This was a totally wild, strange book. Like, there were so many plot points which were like unbelievable even by Victorian standards, and it's completely ridiculous and melodramatic, but it was also really good fun. There's a married couple who are living apart, there's a murder, there's a chase from England to America. Like, every possible bit of drama you might find in a Victorian novel is in this book, and it was really fun to read a book written by 24 authors who didn't collaborate at all, who just read the previous chapters and decided how they wanted the story to go next. I feel like there are definitely some chapters where the writing style suddenly shifts, and there were one or two chapters where I did feel like the writing was weaker or like suddenly became a lot less smooth to get through. But in general, the writing flow is kind of okay. I think the thing that I found most funny was to see how like one writer would set something up and then another writer would just like completely discard what they were doing. So there's one chapter where an author like sets up a murder mystery, a murder has occurred, and the chapter ends being like, oh, I wonder who could have done the murder, and then the very next chapter the next author was like, this is who did the murder. And you're like, why would you say that immediately? But obviously that author was like, I've decided I had a good idea for what happened and I only get this one chapter, so I'm gonna have to say it at once. I'm not sure I would say that it's a good book, but it was very fun. Probably is worth being aware that there are quite a few racial slurs within the first few pages, and that's not part of the rest of the book at all, but just like the very first few pages. I'm sad that I didn't manage to finish Mrs. Scarborough's Family, but that is fine. I think, like I said earlier, I'm just gonna consider it Victober till the end of the week. I'm going to see Arthur Pinheiro play on Sunday, and hopefully I will finish Mrs. Scarborough's Family over the weekend. So I think instead of wrapping up this vlog here, I will more or less finish this vlog here on the 31st of October, and then I'll maybe do like a little clip on Sunday when I have hopefully finished Mrs. Scarborough's Family and also have a new Arthur Pinheiro play to tell you about. Hello again. So I did indeed finish off reading Mrs. Scarborough's Family over the weekend, so I thought I would wrap up this vlog here. I really enjoyed Mrs. Scarborough's Family. I thought it was really, really great. Had a kind of really interesting inheritance plotline. I always love a good inheritance plotline in Anthony Trollope. Basically, the book begins with Mr. Scarborough declaring that his eldest son is in fact illegitimate, and therefore the property after Mrs. Scarborough's death is going to go to his younger son. And so we follow Mrs. Scarborough and his sons, and all three of those characters are sort of not that nice, but they're quite complicated and interesting. And we also follow Mrs. Scarborough's niece, who is nice and is sort of our heroine, and the young man that she is in love with. And there's various other subplots going on as well, including a plot line about Mrs. Scarborough's lawyer and his daughter, who I really enjoyed. They were my favourite characters. I do feel like Mrs. Scarborough's family probably slightly suffered in my estimation because I read it in the same month as Isla's Angel and Linda Tressel. It probably didn't actually suffer in comparison to Linda Tressel because they're very different books. But I think Mrs. Scarborough's Family and Isla's Angel are both like the same kind of Anthony Trollope book. I loved Isla's Angel, like new top 5 favourite Anthony Trollope, whereas Mrs. Scarborough's Family was really good, but it wasn't like as amazing as Isla's Angel. So I feel like if I hadn't read it in the same month as Isla's Angel, maybe it would be even higher in my estimation. But as it is, it was still really good. And I'm glad that I finished it. And then yes, I also saw an Arthur Wynne Pinero play over the weekend, The Cabinet Minister, which was really fun. I thought it was really good. It was very, very funny, very entertaining. I do think probably of the 3 Pinero plays I have now experienced, having read 2 and seen 1, I think it's probably my least favourite of the 3, but it was really fun to see it live, and the humour was great. It was interesting, the play had been kind of like adapted, so it was still set in the Victorian period. A lot of the dialogue was still the same, but some things had changed. So I went back and looked at the original script like on Gutenberg and had a flick through to see what had changed, and I feel like they added in some humour that would have been a bit too risky for the Victorians. And then also they changed the background of the 2 villainous characters. Basically, I think to take the anti-Semitism out of the play, so that's good. But that probably is worth being aware if you are going into reading the play. But yes, I was really glad to see The Cabinet Minister performed. I've really enjoyed reading some Pinero in the last like couple of years, so it was really fun to actually see one of his shows staged. And yeah, it was still really funny in a lot of places, and the acting was great. So that was really good. So that was a nice end to my Victober, a few days after Victober. Overall, I think my Victober has been pretty good. I didn't get to everything on my TBR, but I did get to quite a lot of things on my TBR. I think the main 2 things I'm sad I didn't get to read are The White Company by Arthur Conan Doyle and In the Roar of the Sea by Sabine Baring-Gould. Especially actually In the Roar of the Sea, because I'm pretty sure that was on my Victober TBR last year, but maybe I'll read that in November or December, we'll see. I know how much Kate Howe loves that book, and I really, really want to read it, and I just keep reading other things, I'm sorry. But yes, pretty good Victober. Do let me know down in the comments, how was your Victober? What did you read? What was your highlight of the month? I think my highlight was probably Isla's Angel or The Mystery of Edwin Drood. Anyway, I will stop rambling. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.